I love Star Wars and I don't want to end up hating the thing that I love or having other people talk so negatively about every like piece, every little thing that they can latch onto, valid or not.
What Scotty really means is that Mickey Mouse's dick is lodged so far up their throat that they are blinded now by how bad Star Wars has become. And so we're doing this podcast again to talk about it. Welcome back to This is the Wayseekers, a podcast for Star Wars fans by Star Wars fans. Whew. It's been a while. It's been a minute. A lot has changed, hasn't it, Scotty?
Yes and no, because like
Yeah,
we're still in the same place. The backgrounds are the same. It's like we never left.
exactly.
But there's also been a little bit of time in between. But
Yes,
we're like getting right back into it. It feels like the same and different in a good way.
exactly. I feel the same way, where it feels very different, but it also feels the same. A lot of things have changed within our lives, within,
Mhm.
the podcast itself. We have a new look. We're starting a new season. But
Season
at the
2.
same time, season 2. But at the same time, it feels like we never left. When we hop back onto the recording software, it felt like last week we were recording our Bad Batch episode, and
Yep.
now here we are just continuing. But in reality, it's been 7 fucking months. Where the fuck have we been? Like, this is not the way.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I don't feel like either of us really was ever like, oh, we don't like podcasting, we're so over podcasting, because I think that's the main reason like both of us
Mhm.
wanted to get back here to podcasts, is because we like podcasting. I love podcasting with you specifically.
Mhm.
So, and that was one of the things when we stopped, we're like, we're not going to do any new podcasts without anybody else. It's got to be us together.
Exactly. We are the duo. We are the Wayseekers. And yes, we're super excited to be doing this journey with you guys again. A whole new season of This is the Wayseekers.
Mhm.
I'm super excited. But first, if you don't know who we are, I'm Austin SWE. I've been a Star Wars content creator for 8 years, 8 long years of my life. And this year I retired. But
Oh, really?
now but I'm pulling a Tom Brady. I'm returning for the next season. I'm back. I'm a veteran now. No, but I'm super excited to be back here because this podcast specifically, season 1 of This is the Wayseekers, is probably my proudest content as a content creator.
Oh.
There's a lot of reasons why. We'll get into that because we're going to be talking a lot about the podcast today and having conversations for our debut episode for season 2. But Scotty Holiday, why don't you let the folks know who you are?
Well, I'm Scotty Holiday. I have been a Star Wars creator for it's been about 2.5 years now. I'm a late bloomer, but I'm so happy that I started my content creation journey when I did. I'm so happy with all the growth that I've seen, and like podcasting was kind of the next place to take it to. So
Hmm.
when Austin originally approached me and was like, "Do you want to join the podcast?" I was like, "I've been in some guest spots on some podcasts. I think I could do this." And
Yeah.
I think one thing that we both kind of learned while working together is that podcasting is a lot of work.
Yes.
But it's work that we enjoy doing, because so many people just come in, they want to chit chat and like just hang out. But like, there's a lot that goes behind this. And it's funny because that's honestly part of what I love is like the collaboration that we get to have while we work on this
Yes.
together.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this new era of the podcast really is going to show the collaborative efforts that we have. I think what's really funny about this new Wayseekers logo, I want to talk about it for a second,
Please
is that
do.
we both put work into this. Like, this is literally both of our work. I mean, I will say that Scotty Holiday did a lot of the heavy lifting here, doing all
And you're the
those
one with the muscles, not me.
Scotty doing all these, circle drawings in the background to, make it look perfect. It took a lot of time. They put a lot of time into that. But as you can see, it also is very reminiscent of the old logo that we had with,
Mhm.
especially the Wayseekers part. Um, so yeah, it's very much like Scotty started the logo, and then, I kind of did some tweaking to it and then finalized it. So yeah, that's just a little fun fact about
Y'all don't
the
even know. Y'all don't even know how long it took me to get Austin to even budge to change the logo altogether. So the fact that, yeah, we did get to work on this together, and it kind of picked up from like what we were doing at the end of season 1
Mhm.
got morphed into what we've created for this logo. So I hope y'all really like it. I love it.
Yes.
When I had put it together like a rough draft, I said, Austin, I've decided what our new logo is. I'm not budging on it. So I hope you
Yes.
like it. Because if you don't, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It when I saw the logo, I just immediately fell in love with it. So, yeah, it's funny cuz like Scotty said, usually I'm not willing to budge, but new Wayseekers, new me, we we're vibing here. Um
Yes.
but I want to talk a bit about season 1 of the podcast, and then obviously we're going to answer the big question, where have we been? Why did we stop podcasting? Don't worry, we're going to get into it. But I
Hmm.
want to be a little sentimental for a second here and reminisce on the podcast. First, I just want to say thank you to all of our supporters who tuned
Yes.
in for season 1 of the podcast. We were going strong there,
Yeah.
and it had nothing to do with us, not having a community, not getting views or anything like that. We
Hmm.
were going strong there. We had Deborah Wilson on our podcast, like 3
Yes.
episodes before
Seer
we
Junda
stopped.
herself. My
Yes.
girl.
Yes. Just an amazing interview, and I honestly learned so much from Deborah Wilson too, having her on the podcast. Even
Yes.
going into this new podcast, I specifically remember us sitting down with Deborah for the first time and being like, "All right, Deborah, let's go through the plans we have for this episode." And she was like, basically, fuck that. We're not going to sit here and plan out our
Yeah.
conversation. She said, it's like going to eat out with your friends, sitting down and being like, all right, and this is what we're going to talk about at this time. She was like, no, we just want to talk. And that's kind of how I feel about this new era of the podcast. I just want to talk.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree. Deborah Wilson, that was definitely a highlight for me. One of the things that was also another highlight for me though with season 1 is
Mhm.
not only getting the return of Ventress. Y'all know I
Yes.
did not stop talking about Ventress. But
Hmm.
getting to like have that fun and experience it with you with the
Yes.
trailer reveal for the Bad Batch season 3. Like I can't remember. I want to say that you had texted me and you're like, we have to watch this and
Yes.
react to it. And I was like, oh, well, I don't really love trailer reactions. And I was like, am I gonna like care? And
Right.
if I remember correctly, you were like, yes, you're gonna care a lot. So just get ready, get on camera, let's go.
Yes.
Um,
That whole time, I almost feel like for a second you read my notes, because I have it specifically here in my favorite moments of the podcast. Scotty's favorite Star Wars character returned. Asajj Ventress, Season 3, Episode 9, The Harbinger. That whole era, like you said, from the trailer all the way to the episode actually releasing, just so much hype, just so much
mhm.
excitement. And like you said, it's your favorite Star Wars character. So getting to experience that with you was amazing. And yes, I do
Oh,
remember texting you because I had gotten the
you got
trailer
spoiled, right?
spoiled. Yeah, I saw on Twitter just someone saying Asajj Ventress, and I'm like, I put two and two together. I didn't watch the trailer until I reacted with you, but when I texted you, I knew that Asajj Ventress was in it, and I
At
knew
some
that
point, yeah.
we had to react to it for the content. Like, that is Scotty's favorite Star Wars character, and they've made that very well known before and after season 1 of This Is the Wayseekers.
I don't know if it's been worse before or after. I almost feel like it was a lot of buildup before, and now we're just in the fallout. I mean, we just
Yeah.
had Ventress Day like 2 weeks ago, which was really
Mhm.
fun, so I'm all Ventressed out. That never ended for me.
Right. I just want to know, where the fuck is this Asajj Ventress continuation series that they were hyping up, or
Yeah.
this project where we were going to get the backstory of how she survived and all that?
You're telling me?
Still no announcement. Wayseekers returned before Asajj Ventress did, I guess.
Oh
Wasn't expecting that
my
one.
god. Literally, we arose from the dead, uh, before we learned how Ventress did, but at least y'all are getting to learn how we did as well, so it's
Yeah.
gonna I'm trying to think if there was anything fun from season 1 as well. And I mean, it kind of touched on this already, but just like the collaborative effort of working on, even though we didn't update the logo like really until now, but going in and like picking out like a color gradient that we wanted to
Uh-huh.
use, going and figuring out how we were going to like lay out the episodes and stuff. And
Mhm.
as much fun as it was planning out the Deborah Wilson interview, even though we didn't get to use our plans for it,
Right.
just like planning everything out together, coming up with the questions for her and really collaborating on that has been, it's a lot of fun. And that's one of my favorite parts about it. And you always talk about like experiencing Star Wars together, like with trailers or like I think you always use the example of like in the movie theater for the Avengers, like,
Yes.
and you're like,
Mhm.
you don't understand like the energy that like, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna yell and scream and blah blah blah. But when we
Right.
watched that Avengers trailer, I was yelling and screaming like a crazy person. And would I have
Right.
done that alone? Probably not. But it's just the
Yeah.
energy building off of each other. I feel like I get what you mean now.
Exactly, exactly. So for those who don't know, Scotty is not a Marvel fan. They do not understand the cultural impact that was Avengers Infinity War and Avengers
No.
Endgame,
Mm-mm.
where you're watching it opening night with a group of fans that has also been waiting for 12 years to get this conclusion. You know,
Mm.
there's so much hype and cheering, and Scotty was like, "Oh, that sounds annoying. I'm trying to watch the movie." And I'm like, "You don't understand. It's not about the noise. It's about the energy, being in a room and vibing together,
Yeah.
all loving the same thing." And that's what Star Wars is really all about. And, that's really why I say that this podcast is the proudest I've been of a lot of my Star Wars content, because it just feels like a celebration of Star Wars. And even though
Mm.
I'm not super in love with Star Wars as a franchise or fandom right now, I still think, there's a lot to love and enjoy, which is why I want to be doing this podcast right now.
And I'm here to keep you before you fall to the dark side. So we're
Exactly.
not going to have a Darth Vader era for Austin,
Exactly. But I will say when shit sucks. Um, speaking,
as will I. So,
yes,
but I feel like
exactly.
you might be more vocal about it now than maybe me, but we'll see. But I
Yes.
always will listen to what you have to say, so you might sway me on some things as well.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I think that that's going to be super fun in all of our conversations going forward about the podcast, about the shows that are releasing, that dynamic where we don't necessarily agree on everything and we can have disagreements, but also show that, it's okay. We don't have to hate each other, like a
Yeah,
lot of Star Wars fans do on the opposite sides of the spectrum.
yeah, for sure. But as they say in Star Wars, it's all about balance.
Balance. Yes. Well, Scotty, why don't we talk about why we stopped doing the podcast?
Do you want the simple answer or the long
Well,
answer?
I guess we can go into both. I mean, the short answer is that it was my fault.
No,
That's
the short answer was that it was time. It was time.
time and energy. Yeah. I mean, so when we were doing the podcast, when I first started doing This Is the Wayseekers, as many of you may know, when Scotty and I did season one, that wasn't the beginning of This Is the Wayseekers. I've been doing This Is the Wayseekers for a long time. And when I started the podcast, I was basically a full time content creator. I was making money from YouTube and Instagram. And then, kind of out of nowhere, Instagram pulled the rug out
Mm,
from the real bonus program, so I was no longer making money from Instagram, which was a huge portion of the money I was making. But when I was making money, I as a content creator, I was able to put a lot more focus into things like the podcast. So I started up the podcast. I started up a fan fiction universe, because I was able to put time and effort into those passion projects, because those were
mhm.
passion projects. I was not making money from them. But then, the Instagram reel bonuses being pulled, it caught up to me. I had to get a real job. And so then once I did get a real job, I started out editing for
Oh
a
god.
podcast company. And long story short, it was just a miserable time. There was, a lot of deadlines, a lot of projects that I was expected to complete for very, very little pay. Like, I'm talking like an embarrassing amount, like to the point where let's just move on from that fact. It's too embarrassing to even admit.
Well,
But
and I feel like a lot of that too is you didn't have the creativity that you got
yeah.
to experience when you were creating your own content. The passion was
Hmm.
not there. and it became
Exactly.
work, even though
E
it wasn't like what you were doing for like your fiction universe or on Instagram or the
Mhm.
podcast, like our podcast. It was
Mhm.
still something you loved, but there was no creativity behind it.
Exactly. And I just kinda got burnt out of podcasting, podcast editing specifically, and as the editor of this podcast, you know, doing this podcast in my free time, I didn't want to be podcasting in my free time when I was doing podcasting as my job and not fun podcasting whatsoever.
Well, you weren't even podcasting, you were just
Yeah,
editing.
I was just editing, very boring podcasts, to be quite frank. And so here I was trying to edit This Is the Wayseekers, and it just didn't happen. To be quite honest, there's like 3 episodes that we recorded that just never came out because recording and, discussing with Scotty was never the issue, was never the thing that I lost passion for. It was that fucking editing. Um, but now I miss the editing so much. It's been like 8 or 9 months since I've stopped working at that podcast company. And then after that, I got a real job, a retail job, in person, which took up a lot of my time. And that's when we really were like, all right, time, and also me not wanting to spend my free time editing podcasts, we just gotta cut the whole Bad Batch discussion thing short. And then we were like,
Yeah.
we'll reevaluate once we get to the Acolyte. We did, and spoiler alert, we didn't come back for the Acolyte either.
Well, and that's the thing. There's two parts of this. One,
Hmm.
as I'm sure everybody knows, and especially if you've been listening since the beginning,
Hmm.
Austin and I are like 10 years apart in age.
Hmm.
So my free time and like need for free time is also different than Austin's because
Right.
I'm in my homebody era. Uh,
Hmm. Yes.
so for me, I got a new job. Was it right before the Bad Batch started or like right at the beginning?
I want to say it was like it was right before. Actually, you know what? You were interviewing for that job when we did the Asajj Ventress reaction.
That's why you were, like, texting me about it, because I was like,
Yes. Hmm.
why does Austin keep texting me?" Like, he knows I have an interview. I
Right.
remember because I had to do the interview on my computer, and I have a Mac, so my
Exactly.
notifications kept popping up, and I was like, "Please stop texting me. I cannot focus." Spoiler alert, I got the job, though, so and I'm still
Yes.
working there, and I love it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I got a job. So at the beginning of the Bad Batch, I also was, like, worn out, like,
Hmm.
exhausted. I also didn't necessarily want to be podcasting at 11 o'clock at night,
Hmm.
which is what we normally do.
Yeah.
11 o'clock Eastern,
Yep.
8 p.m. Pacific.
Yep.
But so me getting into my work schedule, it was rough, but then like I got it together. And then as soon as I got it together, then Austin started his new job.
Yeah.
And we kind of went through the same thing that I went
Hmm.
through at the beginning of mine, trying to figure out that work life balance on
Hmm.
top of content, on top of me time. And I think that's the reason we've kind of come together now because I mean, I'm now like 9 months or so into my job. You're what, 7 to 8?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like 7 ever
And
since we stopped doing the podcast. So it's 7 months.
okay. And so basically with that, like we're in the same place where we're comfortable in our job. We have
Hmm.
our routines outside of work. I mean, I haven't stopped making content. I covered the Acolyte on YouTube, which was a very interesting time to be doing
Yeah.
Star Wars content. You lucked out on that part. Um, I covered Tales of the Empire, which was a lot of fun. I put out my first, like what I consider my first video essay, which was the
Hmm.
What's Next for Star Wars Animation, which I'm still very proud of.
Yes.
So,
Very good video.
and I appreciate that. And I wouldn't say that I stopped, obviously I didn't stop making Star Wars content, but going through the Acolyte and just being
Hmm.
online in the Star Wars fandom during that time was very intense. I actually made a
Yes.
pretty long video after that being like, what is going on with the Star Wars fandom and
Yeah.
just kind of the fallout and everything. So I will say I'm a lot more excited
Hmm.
for what's coming next with
Yes.
Skeleton Crew, Andor, like all the stuff that we have to look forward to. A lot more excited than I was at the end of the Acolyte,
Yeah.
because that was just a rough time.
Yeah, Acolyte. I'm going to be honest. I've joked earlier in the podcast about how I retired this year from Star
Just in
Wars
time.
content creation. It was because of the Acolyte. I mean, officially kind of officially making the decision to be like, I'm done, because like I explained, there was always kind of this idea when we stopped doing the Bad Batch episodes that we were going to come back, whether it was for the Acolyte, whether it was not covering the Acolyte, doing our own episodes. In my mind, when we stopped, we were going to come back way sooner than we actually did. But then I got really disillusioned with the franchise and the fandom as a whole
Mhm.
after the Acolyte. Because here's the thing, for me, I've been, like I said, a content creator for 8 years. I started my page November 1st, 2016, a month before Rogue One came out in theaters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
So
long time ago.
exactly, and the fandom was very different back then because it was The Force Awakens and Rogue One, and then Star Wars Rebels in between. There's three things to be excited over. Oh, and I guess Battlefront One, if you're a gamer. Um,
Y'all know how I feel about Battlefront.
for the most part, The Force Awakens and Rogue One really carried the hype in the fandom for so long. People, the fandom was at its peak. For me personally, it was just, there wasn't this huge toxicity wave. There wasn't, geeks and gamers didn't exist. Star Wars theory wasn't,
He
who
didn't have
he
a
is
he didn't
now.
reveal his face yet, 'cause
Exactly.
as horrible as I feel saying this, I was actively watching his channel back then
Yep.
in the lead up to The Force Awakens.
Hmm. Yeah, it was a very different vibe back then, and seeing the shift that happened from that point to the Acolyte, I saw it coming
Mm,
ever since The Last Jedi came out. That's when
yeah,
things started to change, and that's, I've seen that journey from The Last Jedi to the Acolyte. The Last Jedi came out, people really didn't like that movie, and it kind of created this divide where not only did people not like that movie, but there were a ton of people that also really loved it, and there was a lot of arguments between the fans, and then it wasn't, this super fun place. All of a sudden, you post an opinion online like I'd been doing since 2016, and then
yeah,
all of a sudden my fucking address was getting leaked because I said I enjoyed Rose Tico as a character. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so when all that started to happen with The Last Jedi, a lot of my content started to shift to, I want to love Star Wars. A lot of people's content began to shift to, I want to hate Star Wars. Everything sucks right now. And this is why.
It's ruined George Lucas's Star Wars, like,
Exactly.
ugh,
That's where my content was kind of like, well, I want to focus on what I love. Maybe I didn't 100% love everything about the sequel trilogy, but I sure love that original trilogy. I sure love that prequel trilogy. So let me talk
mhm,
about that. And then as time went on, the toxic wave that started with The Last Jedi just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where it started getting attached to real world politics, where it was
mhm.
like there was the right wing side of the fandom and the left wing side of the fandom.
Which is insane because Star Wars is political and is against
Exactly.
fascism, but go off right wing, geeks and gamers, whatever, like
Exactly.
that. Mm-mm.
It's insane to see, and quite frankly, I think that we can kind of look at Star Wars as a huge reason why Donald Trump was able to be reelected, because that whole right wing, left wing thing that happened, it just kept getting bigger and bigger over time. It started with Disney making bad Star Wars content, right? And people noticing that Star Wars was no longer any good. But then people were able to twist that and be like, the reason why it's not good is because it's woke.
Ugh,
And there's people of color involved, there's LGBTQ people involved, and that's the reason it sucks. When in reality, there's so many more reasons that it sucks that have
well,
nothing to
valid.
do with right wing politics.
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it
It
sucks
could
because they're creatively bankrupt because they're just looking to cash in on Star Wars and people's nostalgia for Star Wars. It's not
mhm,
because they're including more women now, because if it was all white people in Star Wars, it would still fucking suck because they're creatively bankrupt. They are not telling stories. They're here to make money off of our love for Star Wars. And yes, there are creators and creative directors that are able to seep through those cracks and make something really beautiful and really enjoyable within this new Disney era of Star Wars. But for the most part, Star Wars isn't that great. And people started to notice, but people were able to weaponize that and be like, yeah, Star Wars sucks. And it's because women are included, gay people are included, and then that turns people to hate those people. Then all of a sudden they're becoming reactionaries that are like, "Oh my god,
mhm.
another black person's involved." And then who is now started to platform the whole anti-woke thing? The new president elect. And so it's all connected. It's all connected. It's the right-wing pipeline, and
The
it's in pretty much.
radicalization.
Exactly. It's in pretty much every single fandom now. But Star Wars is a huge one. Marvel is a huge one. A lot of these Disney, owned franchises are part of
Mhm.
this. And it just fucking sucks to look at this and be like, you know, we could all just be on the same page and say, yeah, Star Wars sucks. And it's because they're creatively bankrupt and they don't want
Yeah,
to make
like
money off of us. But we'll never be able to address that issue because now the popular stance is that Star Wars sucks because it's woke. And that's why I think it's important that even though I fucking hate what Star Wars is doing right now, that it's important that I come on this podcast and share my opinions on why Star Wars sucks without turning it into something else that it's not,
like
without trying
like
to
giving a
radicalize
valid
people.
reason. Yeah, like giving
Exactly.
valid reasons, valid critique, which is what I feel like anybody should do. I mean, and I talked about this in my video after the Acolyte, and you touched
Mhm.
on this earlier too, is that something I said in that video is I love Star Wars and I don't want to end up hating the thing that I love or having
Exactly.
other people talk so negatively about every like piece, every little thing that they can latch
Mhm.
onto, valid or not,
Mhm.
and just like never talk about the good. Like we balance. You can talk about good, you can talk about bad, but
Mhm.
like that doesn't mean it's woke or that it's
Exactly.
like has an agenda. And
Mhm.
I feel like I think the best Star Wars that we've gotten in the Disney era has been the Star Wars where the directors and writers have been given the opportunity to tell the story that they want, be creative,
Exactly.
try something new. Now, we just
Mhm.
saw what happened with the Acolyte, where now I'm worried that it's going to be, oh, well, we can't try anything brand new or do anything too
Mhm.
crazy because then, people aren't going to like it. And there's going to be this uproar online. So we have to play it safe almost. Um,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm not looking forward to.
Exactly. Because the Acolyte, that's kind of what when I started to realize, like, we are fucked. Like, as a society, as a Star Wars fandom, we are fucked because now people are conditioned to where before it was like, okay, it's a bad product. Okay, let's blame people of color. Now they're seeing, oh, it's people of color, so it's a bad product. It's like they flip flopped, and that was the whole plan all along, was to condition people to be like, okay, no, you have to disagree with the project no matter what, because it obviously, the Acolyte had a very diverse cast. And so,
And that was something they were trying to celebrate,
mhm,
like with Leslie Headland and everybody involved, and that's something we celebrated because I remember we talked about the Acolyte
mhm,
forever ago, and we
exactly,
talked about how, oh, she's actually paying attention to legend stuff. There's a
exactly,
diverse group of people, so that just makes for good storytelling because it's
mhm,
not being told from this, like, small lens.
yes, exactly. And then watching the reaction to the Acolyte, because I was still active online. I wasn't
Mhm,
posting myself, but I was still paying attention to things going on. I saw this kind of overreaction to the Acolyte where it was like, if something may have been like a little off or a little cringe, it was all of a sudden blown up to be the worst possible thing you could possibly imagine.
mhm.
People posting on Twitter getting 100,000 likes, posting something that would have honestly gotten a pass for like any other project, but because it was this project, people needed it to be bad. Like Kiadi Mundi's birthday, for example,
Oh
something that
god.
didn't necessarily matter. It was in a magazine from 1999 before The
That was
Phantom
not
Menace even
canon.
released. It was
Not
never
canon
canon
either.
in the first place. So Kiadi Mundi never had a canon birthday, but it was turned into this thing of, oh, look at this. Leslie Headland is actually more focused on having a diverse cast than following the lore of Star Wars, which was such bullshit because, like you said, we had talked about before the show ever came out that the show was paying attention to legends very closely, probably more than any other fucking project we've had in the Disney era. I mean,
Yeah.
this show had Darth Plagueis. This show had the same cave, the same location that the Darth Plagueis novel started in. You
Yeah.
know, Chimere is basically Darth, not Tenebris, Darth Venomous.
Venomous. Look
Yes,
at you. Look at you.
I kind of read the book a little bit after the Acolyte came out, um, but I, you know, there were it was very obvious to anybody who was actually paying attention that this whole narrative that it was the worst Star Wars project ever wasn't true. And then
Mhm.
it, kind of killed any nuance because was the Acolyte the best Star Wars project ever? In my opinion, no.
Mhm.
But there was, like you said, so much creativity, so much new brought to the table. It wasn't just, oh, let's just bank on people's nostalgia. Let's just bring in Luke Skywalker. But at the same time, it was somehow still a love letter to the franchise, to the books that Leslie Headland grew up with.
Mhm. And
And
so many other
so
fans too.
exactly. And so coming online and seeing people react to this way, it's just mind fucking to me because it's like, how do people not see that they've fallen for this trap, that they've been conditioned to see a black woman leading the show and be like, oh, nope, woke, nope, oh, the writer is actually lesbian, oh, nope, we can't trust this project whatsoever, we're not even going to hear it out.
Yeah.
And
It's
so we're kind of
disgusting.
stuck in this circle because, like you said, Star Wars took that as, we can't do nothing new, we can't add a witch, we can't add what the fuck is it called, a witch,
Lesbian?
um no, like a, oh, I
Night
just watched
Sister?
Agatha All Along too, a witch, not cult, a
Coven?
witch coven, a witch coven. Sorry, that was so beside the point. We can't add a witch coven to Star Wars. We can't add new things because that's not what people want. You know what they want? They want the Mandalorian and Grogu. They want the Mandalorian war. They want the Mandalorian this, the
I feel
Mandalorian
like
that.
I feel like you may have taken over my body in that video that I did because all these points that you're hitting, I'm like, I feel like I talked about this. I feel like I talked about this.
Yeah.
We were always together. It
Yes.
we never separated. Maybe
Exactly.
we're a virgins. Maybe we're a dyad.
Yeah, we're definitely connected. But I think also a lot of fans feel this way, but there's also not really an outlet to feel this way because it is so dominated by the right wing hemisphere. It
To the
fucking
point
sucks.
Yeah, and it got to the point where we had to start being obnoxious online to spread positivity in the fandom.
Exactly.
Like, that was a
Exactly.
whole thing too, and that was, like, after episode 3, it was so many of us that were like, "Okay, this show isn't perfect, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
stuff that we like from it." Then turned into, "Okay, now we have to be as obnoxious as they are being because they're
Exactly.
drowning out the good, and that's what they want to
Exactly.
do." It's
Exactly. And
it's
what they
just
don't realize, like I've already brought up, is that they're also drowning out the voices that don't like what they're seeing but aren't trying to turn it into this bigoted right wing thing. You know,
Mhm.
because we're not being listened to as the the fans that are like, we actually just want to see creative stories from people that both love Star Wars and also have a story to tell that isn't just,
Mhm.
let me make a few bucks from this.
Yep.
And it just unfortunately feels like we are slowly moving towards not getting that. Not even slowly moving towards it. we are rapidly moving towards getting the same old thing. I mean, there was just an article released recently with a ton of insiders of Lucasfilm and Star Wars talking about the way Star Wars operates. And it's just the things that you hear, the way Lucasfilm thinks. It's just like, what the fuck are they talking about? They think that Star Wars is just a nostalgia based franchise, that it's never going to sell unless they are driving people's nostalgia. That's something that they actively think. But then there's nothing that's going to be done about it, because the people that are the loudest about criticizing Star Wars have made it to where it's just complete fucking nonsense. And so that's kind of why I just gave up for a while. I was like, we're fucked, we're screwed. There's no coming back from this.
Well, hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah,
That's why we're here talking about it, and
exactly.
talking about how to recognize things that may not be as great. Like sometimes the writing's really bad. Sometimes
Hmm.
the volume makes everything look like shit.
Yes.
Um,
There's too
but
many
there's
projects, there's not enough excitement, you know. It all feels like their only target here is to make money. They're not doing things because it's the best decision creatively. They didn't
yeah,
all of a sudden decide that Moana 2 needs to be a movie because it was the best decision for the story. It was the best decision for the money they need to make.
yeah.
And the thing that sucks is that they're not wrong either. Like, looking at the top 5 movies that came out this year, they're all either sequels, reboots, or franchise movies. We got Deadpool, Wolverine, Wicked, Inside Out 2. These are all movies that are just sequels and continuations. There's not much new coming from them.
Hmm.
Um, but then Star Wars, looking at the slate for 2025, I think that there's a little triple punch coming up that might just reel me back in.
I I agree with that statement. I know one of the big things that I've seen talked about, and it was in a recent interview. I wish I remember the source because I
Mhm.
don't. But Tony Gilroy mentioned having even more creative control going into
Yes.
Andor season 2, which, I
Mhm.
mean, it's no surprise if you've been watching us that we're very excited for Andor season 2,
Yeah,
as a lot of the fandom is, because
exactly.
believe it or not, the story that was the least Star Wars has ended up being the most well loved out of the
Yeah,
Disney Plus Star Wars era. Imagine that.
exactly.
The creative one.
Mhm. Just like you said earlier, it's the creative ones that feel the best, that people attach themselves to the most, you
Hmm.
know?
But going into 2025, and of course, we will still talk about Skeleton Crew, but we're
Mhm.
going to skip over for that right now. Looking into 2025 and/or season 2, we know it's coming April 22nd, which is your
Mhm.
birthday.
My
So
birthday, made for me.
I was gonna say Tony Gilroy said, "I know how Austin's gonna get back in. I'm gonna put this out on his birthday, and like he's gonna be hooked." So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to do Andor with you
Yes.
because Andor was like, I think that was the second show I ever covered on my YouTube channel. The first
Mhm.
was Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then it was Andor, and those videos are rough. Um,
We
but
all
I was
started
like,
somewhere.
I know. I was like maybe 6 months at the most into creating, but I'm not gonna lie, and we've talked about this off camera before. Sometimes the political stuff, I don't always like catch on to it right away, but I
Mhm.
know that's stuff that you do catch on to.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to be able to have conversations together going into
Mhm.
Andor season 2 and everything that we're gonna see, because it's gonna have political stuff in it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're literally seeing the formation of the Rebel Alliance. I
Right.
am I've never really cared about Yavin before, but after hearing that Tony Gilroy says they're going to show Yavin in a way that nobody's ever done before, I'm
Mhm.
like really excited to go to Yavin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm super excited. Um yeah, there was a interview or a whole magazine issue, I think it was, with
Yes.
Empire
Hmm.
magazine, that kind of did a whole story about Andor, and they talked about, director Krennic coming back, which, oh
Yes.
my fucking god, I just can't wait. And it's
Yeah.
nice to be excited about that too, because it's not like I know that we are going to get new and interesting director Krennic stories. It's
Yes.
not that we are just going to get to see him and be like, "Oh my gosh, his cape is so fucking cool." It's not just going to be him gracing our screens, which is cool
Yes.
sometimes. But I
Yes.
know that we are going to get a very intricate and detailed story and probably learn more about director Krennic than we ever have before.
Yeah.
It's just exciting. And like you said, there's the whole political side of it where, surprise, surprise, the best Star Wars project is the one that got the most political. You know,
I've always said I love politics in Star Wars. I love the Senate shit, so
and the thing is, so many people do. They just don't fucking realize that they like it because in so many people's minds, politics equals black women.
or
That's
queer people
political.
or trans people or
Exactly.
yeah.
It's
People
not.
existing is not necessarily political in Star Wars.
Exactly. But, a whole arc about prison reform and immigration and police brutality, that's fine.
Yeah,
We're
and I
who cares?
and these people that get mad about things being woke, all this
Uh-huh.
stuff also goes directly over their head, which is the craziest part.
Exactly.
This is the craziest part.
Exactly.
I'm like, you don't even see the show that you're saying is good, but you're not even realizing
Mhm.
like all these political themes in here that go against everything that you think you believe in the real world.
Exactly. And to prove a point here, when season 1 came out, it underperformed.
Mhm.
It wasn't not as many people watched it as they thought would or as many people should have compared to the other shows. It wasn't highly watched,
It
which
wasn't
means
beloved immediately.
exactly, which means that there wasn't enough clout to gain from having a whole outrage about how political Andor is and how woke it is because people aren't watching. And that's how you kind of know that it's all manufactured. It's all, they're
It's
not
all a
going to
performance.
exactly. The only reason that they were able to call the Acolyte woke and get away with this is because there was an audience for that. People that thought that the show sucked and was able to attach it to this whole right-wing hemisphere. But I've made that point 100 times already, so let me get back to Andor. Like I said, I really think that season 2 is going to have a much higher viewership than season 1 because I think it's one of those shows that spread by word of mouth after the
Yes.
fact.
Mhm.
After people watched it, that initial wave, they were able to be like, this show's actually good.
Yeah.
You can tune in and watch it. And then I think all those people that, in the last 2 years ended up watching season 1 will be there day 1 for season 2. And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, wow, we have the most viewed Star Wars show. And maybe
Well,
that will swing us back into getting more creative Star Wars and not just
yeah.
Mandalorian.
I hope so. And one of the things that I have noticed that I appreciate as a fan, but also like viewing things as a creator too, and thinking about all this weird behind the scenes stuff that we have to
Mhm.
think about or that comes into our feeds. The fact that they're promoting Andor season 2 already,
Yeah.
like we got the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
magazine spread. There was a D23, there was footage shown at D23 US and D23 Brazil. They
Hmm.
posted what was it, a teaser that they posted online? But the fact that
Yeah.
we're already getting Andor content and like Andor promo
Hmm.
and it doesn't come out until the end of April,
Yeah.
like,
Five
I think
months
that shows
before.
that Disney is very confident in this show and that they
Hmm.
want people to watch it and they want it to be good. I feel the same exact way. I want people to watch Andor season 2. I want to be excited about it, and I'm glad that they're giving it to us
Yeah.
because like we said, this is a more creative show that doesn't rely on nostalgia or rely
Hmm.
on things that we've already seen. And
Hmm.
the fact that there's confidence in that and being able to carry a full show for the fandom. And I feel like Andor even reaches out past just the Star Wars fandom too.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I always joke that it's like their HBO drama.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. And I saw actually in that Empire magazine, Tony Gilroy had talked about how he kind of wishes more non-Star Wars fans were able to get into it, and
Yeah,
that's kind of going to be a big push for season 2 about,
interesting.
trying to get more people into it that aren't Star Wars fans. And to be fair, I think that's a huge roadblock to overcome because I think
Yeah,
for a lot of people, see a series like Andor being connected to Star Wars, and even though you can explain to them like, "Oh, you don't need to watch anything else," it's kind of hard to, convince them of that. Because
Star
for
Wars is a
me,
mammoth of, like,
mhm,
that's a lot.
exactly. Yeah. Like for me, if someone was like, for another franchise that I'm not into, if they're like, "Oh, you can watch this without understanding it," there's still that part of me that wants to know. I want
Mhm.
to know those Easter eggs, those little moments
Yep,
that have you going, "Oh my god, that's the
yep.
thing from season 1, episode 7 of," like that. I still want to do that. Um
We'll have plenty of time to do that together too, which is gonna
Exactly.
be so exciting.
Yeah, but I think that aspect does turn people off, even though, they can try really hard to make it not that way. But at the
Yeah,
same time, I do hope that season 2 and season 1 are gateways into the larger Star Wars franchise, Yeah, there's some things that suck, but Star Wars also has a lot of beauty in it, and, I think
and
every
Andor
person
is
gets
a
to experience that.
and Andor is a beautiful show too.
Yes,
It's beautiful
yes.
to look at, and if anything, I mean, we know season 2 is gonna lead directly into the first moments of Rogue One when Cassian comes on screen, so it'll maybe even lead people to watch that movie, which was
Yeah.
weird for a Star Wars movie, but, like, it's my favorite Star Wars movie, and
Mhm.
there's not even any Jedi in it.
Mhm, and then what does Rogue One lead into? A New Hope,
A
and then
New
after
Hope.
that, you're
Then
already
then it's all
you
downhill from there.
exactly. So, it's really thinking about it now, it's really not that hard to I feel like Andor is a really good starting point, actually.
Thank God
Um,
for Andor.
yes, yes. But speaking of projects that I really loved and are returning and that, really have me excited for the future of Star Wars is that
Mhm.
a few weeks ago, or I think even just a week ago, Star Wars
Barely.
Visions, yes, Star Wars Visions season 3, volume 3 is confirmed.
Yes.
And Star Wars Visions for me, we've been talking in this whole podcast about how the content we want to see is creative stories by people who love Star Wars and have a story to tell. Star Wars
Mhm.
Visions is the embodiment of that. You know, Even if 7 out of 8 episodes of Star Wars Visions I hate, there's going to be that one that I love,
Mhm.
and it's like a story that I can enjoy within the franchise. I don't know. I just am so excited for Visions
No,
season 3.
I don't think I've been this excited about Visions
Hmm.
ever, but, like, for that same reason, it's such interesting new takes into Star Wars, either combining other cultures from around the world into Star Wars and telling a story that way. We know that Volume 3 is it's going back to
Hmm.
Japanese anime, so it's gonna be
Yes.
Japanese studios, which yeah, I kind of love the
Yeah.
Japanese anime Star Wars, like, mold. I will
Mhm.
say we're still not getting Studio Ghibli Star Wars one of these days, but I want that to be a movie. Don't give
Yeah.
us a 20-minute short. Give me a standard 2-hour plus
Oh,
Studio
yeah.
Ghibli Star Wars movie, but I will say we are getting the 4 returning studios from season 1, and we're getting
Yes.
4 new studios. So for me, I am most looking forward to The Ninth Jedi by Production IG.
I
That was my
know.
favorite. Was that your standout for season 1, or was it a different one?
Season 1, my
There's a
standout,
lot of good ones, but
yeah, my standout for season 1 is a little weird. T0B1, Toby was my
oh, but that
standout.
one's
I love that
so
cute little one.
cute.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
I can see you being into that. It's very, like, as
yeah.
your childhood, like,
Mhm.
growing up
Yeah.
with Star Wars, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah, T0B1 was definitely my standout, but the Ninth Jedi, fucking fantastic. I remember just being at the edge of my seat when it was revealed that they were actually Sith. I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
fucking god," like,
The whole lead up to the lightsabers, getting them the lightsabers, and they all turn them on,
yes.
and they're all red, and you're like,
Yes.
red universally around the world, everybody knows that a red lightsaber is bad.
Yep, yep. And the fact that we've waited so long without, like, I just kinda assumed that it was just, we may never see the continuation of it. And I mean, there's still a chance
There's
that these studios are coming back and they're not going to, but the idea that we can see the continuation is very exciting. And if we don't,
yeah.
like I said, there's still going to be a million, or there's only going to be 8 stories, but a million stories that I can love within Visions that are
Oh,
all
I
new
lied.
and
It
unique.
is 9.
Oh,
We
9?
lied.
9
9.
episodes. Oh, okay.
I was trying
Okay.
not to look at my notes to, but then I was like, "Oh shit, you know what? It is 9, we're wrong." But yes.
Yeah. I'm excited for all 9 episodes. I mean, like I said, there's something new to be brought to each one, and the fact that anime is coming back too. Listen, I loved season 2. I loved seeing animation from around the world, but at the same time, I was a little disappointed because season 1 was Star Wars anime. I It came out when I was going through a little bit of an anime phase, so it,
Mhm.
felt very tailored to me at the
Literally
time.
same.
So I was a little disappointed when it was like not going to be anime because I thought that the whole point of the show was anime. But
Well, and I'm
the
glad that they gave other studios, and I'm not gonna lie,
Mhm.
I cried in, like, 4 out of the 9 shorts
Oh
from
yeah.
volume 2, if not more. I don't
Yeah.
remember crying at all during volume 1, but volume 2, they were hitting it in the feels that season. I cried
Yes.
so many times. And
Yes.
so it's kind of set a precedent that I'm like, "So I need to at least cry once,"
Oh
uh,
yeah.
with volume 3.
Yeah. I want to ask you,
Mhm.
season 1 was blue, season 2
Okay.
was red, and I feel like season 1 had a little bit of a Jedi vibe going on. Season 2 had a little bit of a dark side Sith vibe going on. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, I'd say that cuz Screecher's Reach, and then
Love Screecher's
what was
Reach.
the dancer one called again?
Oh, the Spy
The
Dancer, my
spy
favorite.
dancer. Yes, very, imperial. That one had me. That
Well,
was
and
my
don't forget
standout.
same, but don't forget The Pit too. The Pit
Yes.
was a very dark story, until the end, of course, but
Mhm.
even so, it was very, very dark. That one made me cry, Spy Dancer made me cry, like, oh, I was
Yes.
crying so much. But go
Yeah.
ahead, finish your question.
Well, what do you think the vibe theme of season 3 is gonna be, both, like, the story-wise and the color? Because
Um
we love logos at This Is the Wayseekers.
yeah, that's true. Um, so initially when you were like, started the question, I was gonna say green, um,
Mm,
but I'm gonna be a brat, and as soon as I explain my reasoning, you're gonna know exactly why. So yellow and
mhm.
non-affiliated Force users that aren't bad,
Okay,
aren't good. What does that make you
okay.
think of? Go ahead, call me out.
Ahsoka?
No.
Ventress.
Yes.
Oh, the yellow saber.
The
Okay,
yellow
okay.
saber, not a Jedi, not a Sith. Like, yes.
What if we talked about it earlier? They never said anything about Ventress's story continuing. What if one of these studios is going? Well, they're not canon, but what if Ventress might return in one of these?
That would be very interesting. I'm I'm still waiting for her to have her own show,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. But I
I
don't
could
think that you would complain. I
no,
think
not
that
at
if
all.
there was a Ventress episode, when y'all tune in to the This Is the Way Seekers review, you're gonna see Scotty Holiday over here talking about, oh my god, I just love Ventress. So yeah.
Her episode was such a standout, like, the others didn't compare at all. What I could see them doing, because I feel like this would make great for either, like, a, um, almost like a prequel, but not a full story, but like a short story of how
Hmm.
she survived, how she was brought back to life. I
Right.
could see that making for a really great short,
Hmm.
or like a prelude almost to
Yeah.
whatever her future story is going to be. And Star Wars, I mean, I guess you kind of had that, like with the Bad Batch, we got like the Order 66 beginning, and then we kind of got into the actual story.
Hmm.
But I could see Adventure Survival working in a Visions format. Do I think that's going to happen? No, because I'm sure
Hmm.
they're all going to be original stories. We don't even know if we're going to get continuations of the stories that they had from volume 1,
Hmm.
but never say never.
Never say never. Um, I agree with you. Yellow is kind of my first thought, even though I kind of don't want it to be yellow. The biggest reason is because I kind of associate the yellow, red, blue with Star Wars now because of the sequels. Force Awakens, yellow, Last
Okay.
Jedi, red, Rise of Skywalker, blue. Um, but I almost wonder if they're not going to tie into the Force at all. Maybe they are going to. Maybe this is the one that they're going to focus on the non-force users, the bounty hunters, the pirates, the Scotty don't like that.
No. What is it gonna be, a brown logo? A dingy, dusty brown? Visions Volume
Well,
3? The scum and villainy of it all?
so if I were to have one criticism of Visions, is that when season 1 came out, it was all very they were talking about, oh, these are going to be, I can't remember how many episodes it was, but let's just say it was 8. Um they said it was like, oh, 8 unique visions from 8 unique writers and creatives.
Mhm.
But then they all kind of tied into Jedi, Force, Kyber crystals.
Because what else if you're given a Star Wars story, you're telling me you're not
Exactly.
immediately gonna go to Force user?
Exactly. But I was just a tad bit disappointed when it was like, okay, what, like, everybody had the same idea. Especially the Kyber crystal thing felt very weird.
Yeah, there was a lot of kyber crystal stuff for
Like,
sure.
season 1, it was like there was a kyber crystal in like every single one, and to me it felt just a little bit like, even though they said, oh, we have unique creatives and we're giving them creative freedom,
Oh, they
it
were
was
like,
like,
"Here's you have to hit these points at least in your
right,
story."
because to
Hopefully
me a
not.
kyber crystal isn't like common knowledge, and the way that they kind of made it seem is like a lot of these writers weren't exactly like huge Star Wars fans, but they all had like their own unique, like, oh, I watched Star Wars as a kid and this is how I
Mm.
imagine Star Wars in my head. So I don't know. It was just like, was that a mandate? Was there a crystal kyber or a kyber crystal mandate? Mandated
Crystal
by Crystal
Kyber.
Kyber though.
She was the one who said, "Y'all have to include kyber crystals because."
Yes. Shout out Crystal Kyber, because she'll be listening to this.
Yes, she's our manager, remember?
Oh yes.
She knew we were getting back together before anybody else did.
Yeah. And so did our good friend Robin,
Yeah.
aka Tetsuo Pink. They knew too, even though we've been trying to gaslight our friends into, thinking that
And I've
we
been
didn't
trying to
come back.
tell and I've been trying to tell Austin since we decided it, and you were the one who was like, "We can't tell anybody. It'll be a surprise." And I was like, "I already planned that, but you usually don't follow. You
Yeah.
usually gotta tell everybody."
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot better this time around, I would say.
Yeah, even though I think there was a few teases here and there that might have gave it away. I think if there's a will, there's a way might have been a little on the nose.
I thought it was pretty creative and very, like, perfect. Perfect
Yeah,
little
it
hint.
was. I just realized after, I'm like, imagine we posted that and then we weren't
N
coming back to the
and then we never
podcast.
post anything again. No. We're just like, "Just remember this account's still open."
Right. No, but I'm excited. We actually are recording this before we announce that we're coming back. So we're announcing it tomorrow. So we're excited to see people's reactions.
Yes.
Um, and talking about the podcast and us coming back again, since we're kind of on that wave, I think this is a good time to talk about Skeleton Crew
Yeah,
because,
you just talked about pirates too, so
yes,
perfect, on brand.
absolutely. Before we get into Skeleton Crew, Scotty and I are excited to announce that for the beginning of season 2, we are going to be reviewing all 8 episodes of Skeleton
Yes.
Crew for the next 7 weeks.
It's gonna be
Um,
fun, and we made it to, 7 episodes with Bad Batch at least. I think we made it to,
yes,
like, 11, so we definitely are
exactly.
gonna follow through with this one because it's not as much work.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, we can't 100% promise what is going to happen after that, but for the next 7 weeks, you have This Is the Wayseekers. Ooh, that made it sound like we weren't planning on staying. We absolutely plan to stay after those
But
7 weeks,
only if y'all watch, and
but
if
we
not,
are
we're going.
exactly.
Kidding.
But we are only promising that you are getting 8 episodes of This Is the Wayseekers for season 2. Um, but Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest.
Mhm.
When the show was announced, I was like, eh. When it was announced it
Yeah.
was part of the Mandoverse. Eh.
Ugh.
When I saw the first trailer, eh. But now I'm a little hyped for Skeleton Crew. I'm not
Austin
going to lie.
Austin watches one video of the creatives talking about being creative on their project, and it's like, wow, this story looks so good. I love listening to them talk about how much they're friends and how it's a friend show. Perfect for us two friends to come back and talk about it together.
Yeah. I mean, yes, so they did. as Scotty's referencing, they did a little creator roundtable with John Watts, Bryce Dallas Howard, a few of the
Which I
other
think we both
directors.
love
Yeah.
anytime they do the roundtables with the directors. They're always
Hmm.
so good. I wish they did more.
Exactly, because it really goes into that creative process that we've been talking about this entire time. How we love to see creativity. Here's the thing: I say I love creativity. I say I love bringing new to the table. When that first trailer came out and I saw Star Wars Suburbs, I was like, okay, you've gone too fucking far.
Yeah, I think a lot of us felt that way because I was like, "This is different. It's not
Right.
bad, but it's different."
But now I've spent a few months with it, and it honestly seems like just like a small part of the show anyways. Like it's where they
Mhm,
start off, and then I bet you first episode or second episode, that's when they're gonna get sent off into their mission,
mhm.
throughout the galaxy, as the synopsis of the show says.
Oh,
Um, but when I first saw that, I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this. But the second trailer came out and they showed a lot more of like the pirate vibes, Jude
mhm.
Law's character. I feel like the first trailer was a lot more focused on like, oh, meet the kids, these are school
Yeah,
children. Second trailer was like, this is the mission that they're going to be going on.
yeah.
It just screams innovation to me while also screaming Star Wars, which is, exciting to me because that's what I said I love about Andor. That's what I said I love about the Acolyte.
Well,
Love
and
letters to Star Wars that are bringing something new to the table.
and don't forget, like, Star Wars has always been built on innovation itself.
Exactly.
So I think that's a
Exactly.
perfect tie-in that you mentioned.
Absolutely. Also, did you see the newest, I think it was like a TV spot or teaser where they
No, because I don't watch the TV spots because they give too much stuff away.
Oh. Well, this doesn't give away too much. I'm not going to, it doesn't spoil it
Perfect.
for you. But they kind of really tied into the vibe you feel when you first watch Star Wars as a kid,
Ugh,
and
that's
how,
what I want from this show.
yeah, like your imagination runs wild. They showed a little clip of, I don't know their names. I think the blue elephant guy is Neil. Oh yeah, cuz Neil Nation. I was about to call the people out that do the whole Neil Nation thing, but I won't give you guys any strays. We'll wait till the show comes out at the very least. Neil and this other kid, they were pretending to have a lightsaber duel because they're fans of Star Wars in the show, which I think is a
Well
really fucking unique, cool idea.
well, it's like they're fans of the legends.
Mm-hmm.
They're fans of legends.
Yeah, they're huge Darth Plagueis novel stands.
They were like, "Oh, we love that Acolyte show. Um, we love Leslie Headland." No, I'm just kidding.
No,
But
actually, I saw that one of the kids fell into the right wing hemisphere trap and hates the Acolyte. No, I'm just kidding.
oh my god, I thought you were being serious. I was like, "Really?" Uh, but no, that's the one thing that I've said from day one since that first teaser where we were all like suburbs and Star Wars, huh? Where
Hmm.
I was like, what I want from this show is I want it to remind me of the feelings that I had when I first saw The Phantom Menace in 1999 when
Hmm.
I was 6, being like just amazed at this galaxy that I was seeing before me.
Hmm.
And it seems like it's going to bring a lot of that, and I'm really
Yeah,
excited about it.
yeah,
I I
absolutely.
think the closer we get, the more obviously the more excited I get, like because it's a new Star Wars show, but I really think, and this might get into predictions, but the only thing I want to say is that I think it's going to be better than we all expected.
Absolutely.
I think it's being discounted because it's like kids,
Hmm.
but as the creatives have said since like the beginning, and they said at the roundtable, this is
Hmm.
not a kids show.
Yeah.
It's a story that happens to have kids in the main cast, but it's not a
Yes.
kids show.
Yes, and they said that it kind of brings this perspective of like Scotty said, it is going to still be a normal Star Wars show. The stakes are still going to be high. The drama, the story, it's all going to be
The
on.
danger.
Yes, it's all going to be on par with what we've seen from Star Wars. But you're also going to get that childlike perspective of the Star Wars galaxy, which I just think is very cool. I mean, the
Mhm.
show gets compared a lot to like Stranger Things, and I think Stranger Things is very much
Or the
that vibe.
Goonies.
Yeah, like
It's
if
the big
you
one.
showed Stranger Things to kids that are the same age as like what the kids are supposed to be in Stranger Things, I think that those children would have nightmares, you know. But there's still
Yeah.
that childlike wonder of everything they're going through, you know. They still name the fucking aliens after Dungeons and Dragons characters, you know. Like
Mhm.
it's, you know, I don't know, I really like the vibe they're going for, and like Scotty said, I think it's going to be better than anyone expects. And it's also going to be interesting because this is still technically a Mandalorian Mandoverse show. It's
Mhm.
produced by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni still. Obviously not nearly to the extent as Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. It's very much a John Watts project, but I don't
Mhm.
know, it's interesting. Also, speaking of John Watts, that's something the show also kind of had going for it, at least for me at the start.
Mhm.
John Watts is the director of the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. Um,
Oh, my favorite.
while I think there's a lot of enjoyable moments in those movies, and I don't hate them nearly as much as a lot of other people do,
Mhm.
it's still, you know, like, okay, like that's the guy who you guys are going to bring in for the next Star Wars project, the guy who made Spider-Man No Way Home. But then it makes it so much more impressive watching the trailer, and it's like, how the fuck did John Favreau get visually mogged by John Watts? Like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of proof that literally everyone can make the volume look good except John Favreau, apparently. Like,
Well, and don't I do love a lot of his stuff, but also Dave Filoni.
yeah.
We all
Like,
watched Ahsoka.
yeah, I don't know what's going on because the Skeleton Crew is still in the volume, but
Yeah, but it
it
looks
looks really
stunning.
good. Yeah, it looks
You know
really
why?
fucking good.
It's probably
Why?
because they pushed it back, like, 2 years and actually gave, like,
That
the
is
special
true.
effects people time to finish to make things
Mhm.
look good.
'Cause they did, I do remember that they did stop filming, like, 2 years ago pretty much, at least a year and a half ago. It's definitely been over a year that
Yeah.
since filming wrapped. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that Skeleton Crew is going to be good, and that's why I say that I kinda feel like this triple punch that they got coming up between Andor, Visions, and Skeleton Crew, it might just pull me back in. Like I
Oh,
said,
yeah.
still gonna be honest about my feelings on everything, but, you know, it's a little promising. I'm just hoping that this isn't only happening because these projects are remnants of a pre-Acolyte Star Wars, and that in
Mhm.
2026 that's when we're going to get to the post-Acolyte stuff where it's like, we're not doing anything new, we're not doing anything exciting. You're going to get 6 Luke Skywalker movies, and if you don't want it, well, bye.
Well, my question then is, do you have any hopes or predictions for Skeleton Crew that you hope to see or would like to see, even if it's not something like, creatively, even if it's just like a story beat?
I honestly don't know. The only thing that really comes to mind is that I don't know if this is really a want. I think it's more just a prediction. I think a lot of people have talked about this already, but it's a Mandoverse show, and I think that they do have to make some connection somewhere because otherwise, why have it be connected at all?
Yeah.
Um, they kind of have been alluding to this idea that they're getting lost in like wild space or somewhere that's not necessarily been explored within
Mhm.
Star Wars. Ahsoka just introduced a new galaxy in season 1 of her show. There's some behind the scenes pictures, or not behind the scenes pictures, but there's like stills in a magazine or something where Jude Law's character is like reading text that looks very similar to what we see on the Dathomir planet. What the fuck was it called in
Peridia.
Ahsoka? Peridia. Um,
You talking about, like, the Zepho text?
yeah,
Or
there
well, no,
was like a
was it
picture.
Sith? Oh god,
I
what is
think
it
it was like
called?
Sith text or something
Oh,
along those lines.
Arca-tat or something like that.
Yeah,
I should know this. I'm gonna really
yeah, you're
judge
supposed to be
myself
the
watching
lore
this back.
expert.
I this is live. This isn't, like, pre-studied. Um,
But have you seen the image of him like reading that text or whatever?
Probably, but this is why I like podcasting with you because you pay attention
Mm,
to more of the weird, like offshoot news type things. That's the
uh-huh.
thing. I don't know Star Wars news. I rely on other people for Star Wars news because
Uh-huh.
I just don't keep up with it. That's why I love doing things with you because half the time you're like, "Did you see this?" And I'm like, "Do you think I saw that?" And then I learned something completely new. So I love Austin SWE as my news source,
Yes,
my
I
Star
love
Wars news net.
yes, and I love Scotty Holiday Star Wars as my lore source. Um and
Oh,
spelling source, animation
pronunciation.
source, punctuation, all things Scotty Holiday. But I think there's going to be connections where I think that the galaxy or whatever they get trapped into, I think it's going to be the same new galaxy that was in Ahsoka.
Interesting. Okay.
But otherwise, I have no idea what to expect from the show.
I know one common thing I've seen a lot of people say is they think that Hondo should show up in it. Do you think we'll see
Ooh.
Hondo? Because
Um.
pirates, he's alive. We know because
Yeah.
he's on Batu.
Yeah. That's true. I could see it. I definitely could.
If
I
there's
feel
any show to
like
bring him in, the
yeah.
pirate show.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the Mandoverse is just waiting for their moment to bring him in. I mean, I loved him in Clone Wars. I loved him in Rebels. I
Yeah.
love Hondo even in the Galaxy's Edge stuff that I've seen. So
Hmm.
I'm not gonna complain if Hondo shows up.
Do you want him to show up? Do you think he should show up?
I mean, if there's a place for it, because
Exactly.
if it is there, if they are going to a new galaxy or whatever, or kind of unexplored territory within Star Wars, I think it might be a little off if Hondo is there. But if there's
Oh,
something
true.
more
In a
to
new
it,
galaxy. Yeah.
yeah, if there's something more to it where Hondo has a good place in the story, then I'm all for it. And I kind of trust the creatives just from hearing the way they were talking about it. Maybe it was all bullshit, a facade for the Star Wars YouTube channel for people like
Stop.
me to get involved. But I don't know. I kind of trust them to um, utilize him in a way that makes sense if they were to bring him in. So,
Yeah, that exactly. That's kind of how I feel. A lot of times people complain about cameos and stuff for the nostalgia of it all. And like
mhm,
I personally love a cameo that makes sense for the story, not just
yes.
a oh look, it's
Hmm.
blah 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 from this one thing.
Exactly.
Are you
It's
happy he's
exactly
here?
right. It's exactly what we brought up earlier with director Krennic and Andor. It's like
Exactly.
we know that it's not just going to be, oh, look, it's Krennic. And so
Yeah.
that's what I would want from Hondo and any cameo, really. I don't want
Hmm.
no Luke Skywalker Book of Boba Fett situation ever again.
Well, I was trying to think of predictions that I had. And like I said, I'm just, as we kind of talked about, we're just going into this wanting it to be good. I think
Mhm.
that's a good consensus. Uh, we're excited
Yes.
and we think it's going to be better than we expect. But the one thing that I've kind of latched onto that I haven't really had time to talk about or like made a video about or anything is connections to the Old Republic. There's that
Ooh.
scene in the trailer where they're at like a bar or something, and one of the
Mhm.
pirates is like, "Where'd you get an Old Republic credit?" And that's kind of what like starts a little bar fight where the kids have to escape. And I think that's where they
Mm.
meet up with Jod, and he's like, "Come on, like I'll help y'all get out of here."
Uh-huh.
But also there was a article from Screen Rant where they said the planet that they're from, which is called Atin, Attin, was
Uh-huh.
once known as the crown jewel of the Old Republic.
Oh.
So, what I'm thinking about this is I'm like, is this going to be like foreshadowing Old Republic storytelling in the near-ish future with Star Wars in general? Because we
Ooh.
know High Republic's ending. Doesn't it
Mhm.
end this year?
I think so. Next year.
But it's going to be ending soon. We're getting to the end of the High
Mhm.
Republic. So I'm like, are we teasing and foreshadowing a move into Old Republic storytelling here?
Ooh. Okay.
Like,
I
why
like
else were we
that.
teasing it?
Right.
Like, why not have a High Republic credit? Why
Yeah.
not call it the Jewel of the High Republic?
Right.
And
And
I want to say that Nar Shaddaa was also referred to as like the crown jewel of or like of Hut space, which
interesting.
is a big planet in KOTOR 2. Here we go. This is why
Oh.
you said you come to me for the lore. Look at me just being like, what about this one planet and this one part of space? I could be wrong. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure Nar Shaddaa was called like the crown jewel of Hutt space or
Mhm.
something like that. But either way, that's an old Republic connection.
Right. I like that. Things like KOTOR and like a lot of the more obscure legends novels and things like that. I like seeing those connections a lot more because I know
Mhm.
that like if we are getting Knights of the Old Republic connections, it's more than likely that John Watts was like a fan of those video games
Yeah,
and is
true.
bringing that out of his fandom. Same with Leslie Headland for the Acolyte.
Mhm.
We know that she was bringing in Darth Plagueis and what's that metal called again? Is it corstosis? Cortosis?
Cortosis.
Something along those
It's
lines. Ooh, we're
Cortosis. I
fake
was trying to
fans.
I was trying to think of the planet name. Oh, Baldemnik. Baldemnik
Oh,
is the planet, and
Baldemnik.
Cortosis is the lightsaber resistant material. See,
Uh-huh.
we're just a little
Okay.
rusty. We just had to get
Okay.
in the groove.
Right. Okay, it's only episode 1. It's only episode 1. But seeing those connections, it's coming from a place of like I loved this as a fan, and let's be
Hmm.
honest, they're not bringing in fucking Corstosis. I can't even say the fucking name.
Cortosis.
Cortosis. They're not bringing in Cortosis because they're like, oh, this is gonna make $1 million.
Yeah, it's
Because
not
as you can
Beskar.
see, even huge fans here barely even know the fucking name of it. So
But
it's
that's what
it's things
makes
like
it
that.
fun. That's what
Exactly.
makes it fun. Little things like that,
Hmm.
obscure Easter eggs that aren't like, "Hey,
Exactly.
look, it's Ahsoka Tano, who you love from the Clone Wars."
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm excited, and we're gonna be talking about it. Like I said, for the next 7 weeks because episode 1 and 2 come out the same day, and there's 8 episodes. Super excited. Episodes will be releasing every Thursday. So yeah,
Y'all hear that every Thursday?
every
Austin said.
Thursday. Yep. And we'll be recording them pretty much right after we watch on Tuesdays. So you guys will get to see like our authentic reactions, our conversation right after the fact without being able to prepare much. So, yeah, there's
Which
a
will be
lot
a
to
lot
look
of fun.
forward to here.
I
Yeah.
agree. And I'm just looking forward to talking about Star Wars with you again.
Yes, me too. That's why I'm so happy that we are back doing this podcast again. This is the Wayseekers is back, bitches.
Yes, and I know we touched on it earlier, but I want to say also just thank you to everybody who like has stayed subscribed and following us on social media while we've been horribly inactive. We really appreciate y'all sticking around, and
Yes.
I can't wait to for y'all to see the new stuff we're putting out.
Yes, me too. I can't wait to see where all this goes. And like we said before, we need to make it till Andor because, bitch, I'm talking about that show with you. I don't give a fuck.
Yes, we have to have a whole birthday and or premiere party. It'll be
Yes,
perfect.
I'm so excited. Well, if there's nothing else, Scotty, why don't you send us out of here just like old times?
Yes. Make sure you follow us on social media at Wayseekers Pod. We have a Blue Sky now and Threads. Make sure you follow us there
Yes.
or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thank you all so much for listening or watching, and may the Force be with you always. Why do I have to be the one with Mickey Mouse's dick in my mouth?
Well, I've been throwing fits on my Instagram
Oh,
story
you're
and,
right.
hating on him and his entire being, his company, everything he stands for. So